Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast with Ron and Kristin, where leadership meets entertainment. This podcast features stories with names and certain aspects that have been changed to keep submissions private. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to episode 79 of the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast, where leadership meets entertainment. As always, I'm Kristin, and I'm joined by my co-host and CEO of Forward Operations, Ron Ward. Now, full transparency here. We were going in a completely different direction with today's episode when I saw an Instagram reel about Walmart's no-quit policy. It caught my attention, and I dug in and saw that Walmart isn't the only mega company with a no-quit policy. And I thought it would be a great time to talk all things attrition because it's clearly a crux for so many companies and organizations.
Kristin, you're so right. And I'm so excited to be back. I've been traveling and
Yes.
I always look forward to recording this. And when you sent this idea, it superseded the previous idea that we had.
I agree.
Do you not remember, like, it's so crazy to me. I can remember being in high school and what we were worried about or college was getting a job.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the whole conversation. And now the conversation's changed. And I'm going to say this funny thing before we go too far, but I think, number one, do you not see like there's people that have dropped out of even looking for a job? Someone out there, and if you're listening, are keeping these people up, whether it's the government, it's mom and dad, whoever it is, kick them out of the basement and let's get things rolling again. This should not be the philosophy of the United States of America. We are slowly taking ourselves down a pit that I'm not sure we're going to get out of. Okay, I feel better.
Yeah, and on that, I have a friend who manages an auto repair center, and he was telling me it's been uber difficult to get any mechanics. He's down 3 mechanics right now. And nobody is applying. And it's just wild to me. I know so many people growing up, you do too, probably, Ron, where it's like they just have that skill set. And so to know that there's a shortage of them out there, you're spot on. I mean, someone's paying for their lifestyle, right? I don't get it.
I hope this country starts investing in manufacturing again, but also manufacturing training.
Yes.
We call it trade school, where you're developing a trade in
Right.
high school. And it's almost like those things most companies have to do in-house, but I'm talking about general things where you learn those kind of skills, but you got to have a need for it. And yes, we need to get back to that. But anyway, back to the topic. We know that keeping good employees is vital to the success of any organization. And the reality is the philosophy that I just mentioned is alive and well.
Mm-hmm.
So if, it's a leadership question, is where's the line when you are trying to keep employees or you've got employees who are running over their managers or showing up late or not giving good service, which I'm hearing over and over.
Yeah.
That's the line. And Kristin knows this, but I had research from doing my book that I'd lost for a while. And I found it. So I started doing Ron's rants on social media. And by the way, if you have a rant, send it to me and I might rant for you.
Yeah.
But when I read those, Kristin, I got stirred up. I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to get, not only do we have employees not wanting to work, we got terrible managers trying to keep them. It's a recipe for disaster.
Oh, it really is. And it's really wild. When I started researching this, I was like, I understand attrition is an issue. Like we did an entire episode on the power of retention, and we're covering it today with a new twist. But retention is so incredibly important. But a lot of these companies, they're going too far. So I'll go back to this. We're going to dive into have they gone too far, but employee turnover, it's a costly problem. A lot of people don't realize that. And that's not just in terms of dollars, but also morale and productivity. And when you have an employee leave, it's not just their workload that has to be redistributed. It's also their knowledge, what you've taught them, the relationships. Maybe they have vendor relationships or even just interoffice. And, their contribution to the company culture. You're losing all of that when you have turnover. And, this high turnover that we're hearing about, it can be devastating, especially for industries like retail. Oh my gosh, poor retail, where the margins are super paper thin and the competition is fierce.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of other issues that come into play You hire mediocre employees who are not held accountable because
Mm,
employee retention is so important. Then those employees get promoted to management
yeah.
because they've been there longer. So then you've got mediocre managers. So again,
Hmm.
it's a vicious cycle that I hope we can bring some clarity. But I hope all the people listening will begin to speak out on this and some other things that we've talked about, love of country and hard work and the
Yeah.
things that actually made this country strong.
Right.
And I'm just so concerned. I guess you can tell if you're listening. I'm
Yeah.
very concerned
As you
about
should
this.
be. We all should be.
Yeah. So speaking of retail, let's talk about Walmart, the big conglomerate.
Oh, yeah.
Recently, they've been in the news for their so-called no-quit program. Now, if you haven't heard of this yet, it's basically a program where employees are encouraged, or perhaps more accurately, pressured to talk to their manager before they decide to resign. And that was a post on Reddit by a Walmart employee that went viral showing a notice that read, "We value you, your growth, and your contributions," followed by, "We have a no-quit program." The notice goes on to say that they feel many situations could be resolved through a conversation,
Mm.
and they strongly encourage employees to speak with their manager before making any decisions. And Kristin, I was going to tell you that I did a post one time that says most conflicts can be settled with one good conversation.
Right.
I am really torn on this, and I like for us
Me
to be
too.
solution-minded because I'm going
Yeah.
to tell you why. If they were saying you'll be fined if you quit, but it says
Right.
strongly encouraged to speak to a manager. And I really do believe that because of mediocre managers, the managers may not give the feedback that's needed. So
Right.
they don't even know there's this divide. So they decide to quit. So I'm really on the fence. I would love to hear from people. I'd love for you to
Hmm.
contact us to give us your opinion. Again, it could be one step to more control. But
Right.
when I kept reading the research on this, it seemed like everyone was kind of making a negative slant. But it would
Right.
also say, think about this. Let's say you're running a company and you can't keep employees. You're going to start coming up with something.
Yeah.
And so this is, again, they may be drawing straws here, but maybe they had to do something. I don't know
And
for sure.
I am with you. I actually am not disgusted by it like so many people are. It's a really interesting concept. And, it sparked a lot of debate on one hand. But it also it's commendable, in my opinion, that Walmart wants to address issues and resolve them before losing an employee. And it's the store manager, the general manager that they have to speak to. So, like to your point, Ron, there's probably, think of a Walmart, they're huge. You have so many different departments. There's probably 20 mid-level managers in your
Hmm.
typical Walmart. Don't quote me on that, but that's just a guesstimate. And then you have your general manager who's over all of that. And that's who you're supposed to go and talk to.
So I
And
have a question, Kristin.
yeah.
In your research,
Mm-hmm.
did it show, let's say that I'm working at Walmart, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to talk to the manager and I leave. Is there any repercussions, is what I'm saying? Because if this is
No.
a suggestion, like if they were tying, if you want a good job reference in the future, which most corporations now, they play it safe and just say the dates that you worked.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, as long as they're not totally destroying someone here, I'm still on the fence with this thing.
Yeah, no, I did not see anything where there's a fine, where they're withholding anything. Some people were talking about how they wouldn't get unemployment. That is the way it works. You quit, you don't get unemployment because that was your decision, right? So that naturally already is an element to it. If you're quitting your job, either through talking to the general manager or not, you're no longer able to get unemployment.
So,
So no, I didn't see anything that looked illegal to me. And I looked up that piece too. And technically, you don't have to, legally, you don't have to go talk to the manager. But I think, it's a respectful thing to do. I think that should probably be the process regardless. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
totally. And I think we're going to have to bring the song back, RESPECT, because that's the part
Yeah.
I watch all these viral videos of people disrespecting police, each other. Like it's a
Right.
disrespect, hypocrisy and disrespect would define the last few years, in my opinion.
It's a
But what
puss move, don't you think? It's a puss move to just
it
quit and
is,
not talk to
of
leadership.
course it is. And
Yeah.
that's what I was going to say. Sometimes it teaches a message that you have to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Communication is missing. So, Kristin, what I hope that we can help our listeners in thinking about this, because you may own a company, you may be managing people, or you may be working for someone. We certainly encourage you to talk to them. I always say that in coaching, have you talked to your manager? Does your manager know how you feel?
Right.
So that's a very important part. But what I would like to know is, there are a lot of employees in the research who say when they read that, like if they wanted to quit and then they're reminded of that policy, it makes them want to quit even more. So what's the psychological aspect of them quitting? And then we've used the term a lot, ghosting. And I put something humorous in here. I said, if you ghost, you probably can't zombie. And the zombie is the person who leaves and then realizes maybe it wasn't that bad and they want to come back. So I tell every person, the way you quit is the beginning of your next interview, or the way you accept the fact you didn't get a promotion might be the next step or the next interview for you. Because if it's an internal promotion, they're looking at how you handle rejection or disappointment. But Kristin, what do you think? How do employees perceive this?
Well, I think it definitely depends on their mindset. So like someone like me, I think it's the respectful thing to do. And I actually would appreciate it and have respect for the company for wanting to take that time. People that weren't brought up to respect authority are going to think it's just someone else trying to control you, someone in that authoritative position or role. So I really feel like your upbringing has a lot to do with it.
Sometimes, Kristin, this pains me to say this, but the people who need this podcast the most probably don't listen.
I know, right?
People who would not talk to their manager and they're offended by this, they probably are not pursuing self-development and listening to a leadership. They're probably listening to crime junkies smoking pot. I'm kidding on the, well,
you know
maybe
what's
I'm not.
funny with the crime junkies? I just stopped, not that specific podcast. I used to listen to true crime all the time. I started about 3 months ago. I started feeling like it was just a waste of my time. And I've totally quit all of the crime podcasts and whatnot and focusing just on personal growth, leadership, and current events. And I feel so much better.
Kristin, I did the same thing because they bait you. Like, you remember when it says, listen to the end?
Oh, right.
They do that all the time because the duration that you're on there helps them apparently in the algorithms. It's more your wheelhouse. But I started saying, is it going to bother me not to know how this concluded? Because I was getting pulled down those rabbit holes. And I had an internal, workshop with myself or wood shop. And I'm like saying, hey, is this good for me? Can I live without this? And it's helped me a lot. It really has.
Same here. I would like literally internally be like, this, you're learning about people that have been killed and people that are missing, and let's focus on the now and the future, not the past. That's not your past, right? Like I just felt like it was not a healthy focus of energy.
Kristin, I want to ask you a question. This is off pace, and we've never discussed this. I was an adjunct professor. I think you know that. And one time I had a criminal justice class. It was pretty equally divided, males and females. I think there were a couple more females. So I wanted to do something fun. So I had them be a journalist, if that even exists now. It did then.
I know.
So this was a long time ago. And I said, I just want you to write about a crime that occurred in your community. And you're doing the investigative journalism on this thing. It's like 2 pages.
Yeah.
There were, I'm going on memory, maybe 15 females. 9 out of 15 wrote about sexual assault.
Interesting.
A couple was full-on violent, rape and things like that. So it really made me wonder. I didn't know if it's that nagging fear they're dealing with, or there was a couple that I thought it might have been a fantasy. I don't even know. But I do think that is a fear. And I just wonder, we don't know the answer to this, but I would love to know this. The long-term effects of listening to crime, because I talk to so many people, even I tell them we have a podcast, say, I'm hooked on, the different crime shows, Crime Garage, Crime Junkie, all of those. And I do wonder if that does not create some kind of psychological anxiety, because whatever you focus on so much, is naturally going to be in the back of your
Right.
mind. Now,
Absolutely.
if it saves people, like I was talking to a woman the other day, and she was like, I can't believe people still jog at dark in Central Park. And I said, I
It's a
have to
really
agree
good
with you.
point.
Like, I have to
Yeah.
agree with you. The chances may
Right.
be slim, but it's happened.
Oh my
So
gosh. Yeah. Yeah,
if it,
it's a balance. It's definitely a balance. Like for me, it is the ones that really grasp, I know there's a lot of controversy and we're way off topic here, but the ones that really seem to grasp the nation are the ones that are less likely. Like the person doesn't live a risky lifestyle, right? Like the ones where, if I was dating a gangbanger and I ended up getting caught in the crosshairs, that's not going to grip the nation because I was putting myself in a risky lifestyle, a risky place, right? But it's the ones that, are living a life like the majority of us in a relatively safe place, and their mothers, their wives, like those are the ones that really seem to grip the nation. And so back to the comment on the sexual assault, it's that it could happen to me type of
yeah,
mentality, I feel, that really can take over. And there's another element. I do think that it's intentional to desensitize us, because it definitely has done that to me. And, just being married to a police officer, he'll tell me things. That alone is desensitizing. Um,
yes,
but
you're
listening to all those, it's not healthy. You should still be shocked by things that happen, right? Like
exactly.
it
And
shouldn't become the norm.
I don't think people are aghast now. They just listen to somebody being
No.
tortured and, beaten,
Yes.
raped, and killed like it's, you're listening to almost
Right.
anything. So, yeah,
Yeah.
you're exactly right. The desensitization
Mm-hmm.
is true. So
Yeah.
let's talk about em- employees want autonomy, but I have read a lot of studies on Gen Z that they do like direction and they do
Oh,
like
real
feedback.
quick though, I just wanted to point out, it's not, I don't want to just pick on Walmart here. McDonald's did the
Oh,
exact same thing. And so they implemented that same, it wasn't called the no quit policy, but it's basically you have to talk to your GM before you quit. And it's like a no quit restaurant, or, that's, you can't leave until we give you permission. I mean, that's pretty just standard protocol in my opinion, but I guess people are just ghosting pretty regularly these days. But I just wanted to point out Walmart is not alone. McDonald's is doing the same thing.
you know, when I was coming up in certain elements of law enforcement, you had to sign a contract that you would stay, like, because they were helping you
Mm,
with your education, that you would
sure.
stay for 5 years, those kind of
Yeah.
things, or they pay for your training, which costs a lot of money. And I never thought about it then, but this is a little different, just a
Yeah.
little bit different element. But let's look at this is what companies and managers have to think about, that balance between autonomy, but also, balancing autonomy with restrictions. So
Right.
we teach in executive coaching, people respond better to shared agreements than they do directives. So, in other
Right.
words, Kristen, if I'm talking to you and I say, hey, can we agree that you will come talk to me if you ever get disillusioned or discouraged here at work before you would quit? And a shared agreement like that many times goes a lot better than if I said,
Yes.
Kristen, you're not allowed to quit. This is a no store. So you have to go to the upper management if you ever decide to quit. See the
Right.
big difference psychologically in that?
Huge.
One of
Huge.
them is giving you buy-in, giving you some autonomy, and it's, we want you here, of course.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important distinction that
Yeah.
people need to think about.
Well, I had a manager who did that. So I came from one bank to another, and it was a bank that is a smaller local bank that everyone wanted to go to in banking. And when she offered me the job, she was like, I need you to, I'm going to go over 3 things that are critical before you accept the job. And one of them was, if you have any gripes or concerns, I need you to come to me. And she said, in the past, people had just griped down, right, to their employees or even across the board to their peers. She's like, that doesn't help, and it's very toxic. So she didn't know me from Adam, so she wasn't saying I was going to do that, but she just
Right.
said, this is what I need you to do. And I really respected that and appreciated that. And, when I did have things that I needed to bring up, I felt like that was already an open door. So that was so smart versus having to address it after the fact.
Yeah, and you wonder how much we're not going to go into it, but you wonder about benefits, salary, location. I remember one time I had an FBI agent that was a friend of another FBI agent who I knew him really well. It's when I lived in Charleston, West Virginia. This guy reached out to me wanting me to help him get in with the FBI in Charleston. At that time, I was on that board and I did have a little influence. Don't call me now, folks. I got nothing. So I had people reach out a lot, Kristin.
Yeah.
That's the
I
reason
can
I said that.
imagine.
So, but this was a great guy. I met with him and his wife. They came to Charleston. Oh, she had gotten this huge position, in Charleston. So he needed, not only did he want to be here, he needed to be here. But in Charleston, at that time, there was like 3 FBI agents or 2. I think there were 2. So it was next to
That's
impossible.
not a lot. Oh my
It's not a
gosh.
lot. And that's,
Jeez.
things have grown. Don't get me wrong, but that's not that uncommon, especially in smaller areas. In the whole county, there might have been 3 or 4, but not that many. That's why a really good FBI agent learns to work with locals and you get the task force and all that.
Yeah.
But I tried and there just was not any openings. But it did make me think and by the way, this person ended up going on as a postal inspector, same pay, same
Okay.
everything. But, the FBI, especially at that time, was a little more prestigious.
Mhm.
But I was very happy because his wife had gotten a good job. But what we've gotten written up here made me really wonder the impact of salary, because most companies are up in the salary game. And at some
Right.
point, and I'm not feeling sorry for these huge corporations like Walmart, but I'm saying at some point that profit margin's going to go down so much
Yeah.
that this whole thing's going to implode. And I think we're starting to see some of that, especially if it's a company. When I hear people, raising the minimum wage, and people don't understand the impact on a small business. But we won't get.
Right.
I know you could talk an hour on that topic.
Oh my gosh, right. Well, we believe that we've been saying this for many podcast episodes that generally there's 3 reasons that people leave. The manager is probably the main one. Generally, people don't leave jobs; they leave managers or bad managers.
Yes.
Benefits and pay, that's also clearly an aspect. And
Then there's
competition out there, absolutely. And they can be competitive with location. Maybe it's a work from home, right? So it's not always that the dollar, the fiscal aspect of it. But communication is so key. So like I was just talking about my previous managers need to have open lines of communication with their employees. And this means those regular check-ins. I mean, I can't say enough about those. You need to have performance reviews more than once a year. Be able to listen to concerns. I have to share this because it was so poor, and I'm going to call them out. New Seasons Market is it's a Pacific Northwest grocery chain. It's like a Whole Foods, but just in primarily Oregon, a little bit in Southwest Washington. Bougie, right? It's expensive. Good stuff. So anyways, I go there and I cannot remember exactly what those are called, but one of the checkers was wearing all this pro-Hamas stuff, right?
Oh.
And I just, no matter what side, doesn't matter what side you're on, but I was just really turned off by that and felt it. Bottom line, it was unprofessional. And I'm talking that headscarf, and I cannot remember what it is called, but it's what you see all the protesters wearing, right? And all you could see were his eyes. And I just felt that was really unprofessional. And
Kristin, I can't believe you didn't say something. I'm shocked.
Oh, so here I was with my kids. I went to a different checkout line, and I left and from the parking lot called and asked to speak with leadership. And so they put a manager on, and I had looked up the name of that scarf, and that's driving me nuts that I can't think of it now. But I said, "Are you aware that one of your checkers is wearing
hijab?" I know the females wear the hijab. I don't know.
Yeah, it's something different. But it's the pattern is very specific to Palestine,
Yes.
right? So, and I asked if he was aware that he was wearing it, and he was kind of the conversation, I felt like I was gaslighted for sure. It's like he was obviously aware of what his employee was wearing. And all he said was, and I just told him, I'm like, look, that's just unprofessional. I go, we don't need to make political statements in the workplace. And So anyhow, he gaslighted me, right? So I was like, you know what? I am going to. I consulted a few people who have been in leadership a long time, and like, what are your thoughts on this? Like, you need to let corporate know. So I called corporate, and it's again, this is a smaller outlet. There's probably 40 locations. And the corporate person, I left him a voicemail. 3 days later, I see that I'm getting a call back from him. And so I answered, and it was his voicemail. Like literally, it was like hold music and then his voicemail. So then I left a voicemail and said, yeah, I answered your phone call and it went right to your voicemail. Never called me back. It was clearly something where he called over to the store and said, hey, did you get any complaints today? Trying to figure out what it was about in the first place.
Yeah.
And instead of addressing it, he didn't even gaslight me. He just completely ignored the situation. And it's stuff like that, that's me as a customer, a paying customer. Imagine what it's like for employees that are having frustrations and they're not able to get anywhere with their concerns. That was just a wild experience, and
Yeah,
really makes me think
businesses
twice
just
about
so
going there.
need to be apolitical. But
Yeah.
Kristin, I laughed when I read this research. It sounds great. Companies are conducting stay interviews, and they interview you while you're still happy. I laugh because that's called coaching.
Yeah.
That's called, no, you can dress it up, but
Right.
a good manager is giving that constant feedback. And I put 8 magic words in my book. Are you getting what you need from me? And if managers would do that and then dialogue would ensue,
Yes.
you would not get surprised that someone is leaving. You would
Oh my
probably
gosh,
know
I
that.
know.
So I think that as I told anyone, you got to have procedures, policies, things like that. But we are in the people business. Most industry is in the people business. So you should
Yeah.
have your finger on the pulse and know if an employee or employees plural are disgruntled, and then
Right.
you should be able to handle that. You should be able to nip it at the bud, as Barney Fife used to
Yeah,
say.
I love that. Well, it's wild to me because, I think of a stay interview. And again, that's pretty, at least in the banking industry, that's pretty standard protocol, an exit interview, right? And it's wild though. I had my very first position as a banker. My boss was I would say just a little off her rocker, great in some aspects, not in others, but she made all of us it was like you had to do like a rating. It was a phone interview, but it was all digital, and you had to go in and rate your manager on like 20 different things, and you would just hit five out of 10, you know what I mean, or whatever. She stood right there and made us put it on speakerphone and told us, so that's when I do your one-on-one interviews. Go ahead. You would say I do that, right? Yep. That hit 5. You know what I mean? Like, it was
Kristin,
insane.
that's one of my rants coming up. That must be
Really?
really common.
Oh
Yeah,
my
that's why I'm
gosh.
smiling. That now they didn't have someone standing over them, but what the rant is they would have that. They would brag about hiring an external company to come in. They would contract them to do this review, and these people, they could do it confidentially, and they said they absolutely blistered their manager, the company, and nothing was ever done. So they could always say to HR or headquarters or stockholders, depending how big it is, that yeah, we do an internal audit into our work and our employee morale, and that's what they do, and then they do nothing about it. So I found that to be pretty interesting. But you were actually told what to push.
Oh my gosh. I know. I'm looking back. I'm like, what a schmuck that I
sorry.
did it. But it's like, you're young and naive, and you're just like, all right. But yikes.
So Kristin, also in leadership development, there was an interview, and over 60% of young people said they do not want to go into management. That means the managers, and I use this word all the time in training, and if you're listening, and I was just in Texas, I use mystique. I say there should be an element of mystique with managers where you don't just you don't just vomit all of your personal details. You carry a mystique about you. And if you are intriguing to people, it's going to make them want to be like you. So we need to coach people, and we need to have career development programs where you are inspiring people to take their job seriously, but with the view toward future promotions. And I think there's nothing better than to have in-house training programs and employee development programs, but The key is the manager again, because a lot of times they're just going to see it as something that's going to take more time. So you got to sell it.
Yeah.
It's just the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's so wild. And something else that is not done enough of is being recognized. People do not recognize like they should. And that was like my favorite thing to do. But people want to feel appreciated for their work. I remember getting surveys and it was like, would you rather receive a bonus or it was like, or verbal recognition in front of a group or verbal recognition just with your manager, right? It was all these things. And I remember looking at the stats of the Pacific Northwest for the bank I was with, and it was equal people wanting recognition versus a bonus. Like half wanted the financial benefit, half wanted that verbal recognition. That says so much right there, right? And I actually got more, and I know you're going to think I'm crazy, Ron, but I got more out of it when I was recognized. Like it did something inside versus like the fiscal aspect of it. Like a bonus is wonderful, but just being told you are doing a great job, you matter, you're playing a pivotal role, like that to me felt so much better than getting, an extra bonus.
I don't think you're crazy. I think you hit on something major. And I had someone of the Gen Z age that was very disgruntled and expressed that to me. But the boss finally brought him in and said, I just want you to know you're doing a great job. I could hear you dealing with customers and all that. And it lit this person up. And there's a study that showed pay raises last 2 weeks if someone is already disgruntled. In other words, they're like, I got a pay raise. 2 weeks, Kristin.
Wow.
I wanted to touch on this.
That is
because
short-lived.
It is. We need to do a full episode. But in my training, and I talk a lot about brain health, but I use the quadrant of personalities. You got the expressive person. I'm going to be quick. They're usually unorganized, but they're very motivated. They're your cheerleaders. They will arrange socials. They're that kind of employee. So then you've got your drivers. They want to get promoted. They want to know where you're heading, the destination. Then you got amiable. Those are your worker bees. They'll do anything, but they want to be valued. They want you to tell them they're doing a good job. Right. And then analytical wants evidence-based charts, graphs. We know that. But here's my point. A lot of times managers don't take the time to realize the personality style.
Right.
And it's not difficult, Kristin. It's really not. Usually if you study this a little bit, you can tell what kind of personality someone has and you can communicate more effectively. And just so our listeners won't be confused. What I mean by that is, let's say that you want to, let's use food and bev. You want to speed up the time from order to delivery. So if you've got a driver personality, you say, we want to get that burger to the window. That's what they're going to focus on as quickly as we can. Amiable person, they're cooking the burger. So you're telling them, hey, you're doing a great job. We want to cook a little bit faster.
Yeah.
The social person, pull one of those on your team and say, help me encourage people. Help me get this thing going. And then the analytical is going to analyze, like they want a chart on how the line's made. If you can learn to talk to those people on their learning style, their personality type, you can be so much more effective.
Right.
And think about this. And I know, Kristin, you're working on a book or something, but different people draw out different parts of your personality. We've said this before, but also different conversations inspire you in a different way. Yeah. And that's what we get across to people.
Yes. I mean, it's so true. I used to have, anytime I hired somebody, I would have them immediately take the Strengths Finder assessment. And so it's about, what was it, like $20, I believe. There's a book and then there's the assessment code that came with it. And that was one of the first things I did during their hiring week. And it was a 2-part. And one, it showed them immediately that I'm investing in them. And they got the book. And then once we got the results, we went into the book together, highlighted what they were. And then we did a comparison of what everyone is on the team. And people loved this. You get to see who you overlap with because they give you your top 5 strengths. Who do you overlap with? Who are you drastically different from, right? And it also helped me, that's the second part, is it helped me understand how this person wants and needs to be led. I had the team I had most recently, I had 2 people who in their top 5 were harmony. And that shows that they value a harmonious environment more than almost everything. That was like, for one person, it was her number one. And I had a male, and that was his number four. They don't like drama. They don't like,
Right.
just that type of unhealthy environment. And I absolutely approached my whole leadership style with them very differently. And then they brought something huge to the team, because I don't like that. I don't like, I'm not afraid of addressing issues when there's an issue, but I don't love it. So I loved that I had harmonious minded people on my team. So anyhow, it's just really important to understand what makes your folks tick.
Kristin, as we wind down, I want our listeners here, and I bet you did this. When you put someone on a special project, of course, you need to use, we've talked about SMART goals. We won't go into it again, but you need to brag on them. They need to know what a win is. And I remember in staff meetings, different people at the academy, like someone might be over ballistic vests, someone might be over classroom training or something like that. So, and I'm not talking about the managers, I'm talking about the instructors. So I would ask them, hey, will you do a brief presentation on this? And when we did that, there's something about being proud of your organization when you stand up. And I remember as a kid, you're going to laugh, but my dad was buying something at Lowe's, and it was actually my first job in high school, but this was younger. And I just did not know anything about sales. So I noticed his wording. He would go, yeah, I've got this kind of lumber, and so I walked out, and I thought it was funny. I said, I think that guy thinks he owns the store. I didn't realize he was bought in. He was into it. And I didn't, of course, I was too young to understand that, but I just thought, what's he think he owns Lowe's or something?
He stood out to you though, right?
He did stand out, but I realized that he worked there with pride, and he took ownership. So if you can convey that, managers, whether it's special projects or whether they're making a presentation representing your company, maybe they're going to career day. I don't know what that looks like. But you need to find that, because that's also a missing ingredient. They need to instill pride in the shirt that they wear. And I know that's hard to do, like at McDonald's or something, but as they progress in their career, I remember someone tell me they hate their company so much, as soon as they got in the car, they brought a shirt that they could change into, because they didn't even want to drive in traffic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's not good.
That's not good. No. I remember my first job was Wells Fargo, and we got Wellswear when we hit a sales goal or something, and we thought Wellswear was like the coolest thing ever. We all wore our Wells Fargo stuff outside of work, because we just loved working there. And that's what you want, right? So that is so important. And I just want to bring up one thing: transparency. I think, and there's a fine line there. You don't want to, like you were saying, Ron, you want to maintain a level of mystique, right? We don't want to give it all away. And but at the same time, we need to be transparent with some, right? And so employees need to feel that they're in the loop when it comes to the overarching company goals, strategies, and changes.
That's right.
That way they're really not taken aback and surprised by things. And that transparent management, it does build trust and will help employees feel more connected to the company as a whole. And, we've been talking about communication. On the flip side, when there's a lack of communication, it can lead to that uncertainty, disengagement. I felt that when I didn't have a manager verbalizing that I was doing a good job, at least quarterly, I'd just like to know where I stand. And then you feel like uncertain, right? Like, it could just be that they're busy and they just know you're going to do your thing and they leave you alone. But you do need to have those one-on-ones so you don't leave someone feeling uncertain and becoming disengaged.
And Kristin, this should go without saying, but companies need to have a matrix. They need to do research. They need to analyze, why are people leaving, what age group, how long are they staying? And literally, I would do the research with people that have left. My daughter left the company, and they reached out 2 months later, because they were having that turnover problem, and she was very honest and straightforward. So, data does mean something, and it can paint a picture that you need.
Yeah. I know, it's so much, right? And for those listening, we completely dove into burnout and bore-out syndrome. That was a very popular episode. So if you want to learn about why employees, or maybe you yourself, are feeling burnt out, go listen to that podcast episode. We did an entire episode on attrition. where we dove into the nuts and bolts a bit more. And gosh, so much.
Kristin, we probably will expand merch, but rumor has it you have some Dirty Side of Leadership podcast t-shirts.
Oh my goodness. Yes. It's so funny. So I sent 5 of our very loyal listeners t-shirts, and they're loving them. I have Matthew, who's posted a picture recently, and he likes how muscular the t-shirt makes him feel. So I told you I'm a fabric snob. And he ironed his, Ron.
Matthew,
so I appreciated that.
Matthew, I don't like you. Go ahead. Just kidding.
Oh my gosh.
Just let me say this. Matthew looked buff. Kristin sends me a shirt. I put it on. I kid you not. I go, I think I'm going to wear this somewhere or something. And she sends back, iron it first.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
I mean, I like to be straightforward.
I thought I was like looking buff, and I get iron it first. Whatever.
I'm sorry.
We love you, Matthew.
Now, if it was wrinkle-free, then I would have been able to focus on biceps, right?
And then our Facebook administrator, where
Cassie,
did you mail hers? Where did you send Cassie's shirt?
I know. Well, apparently to an address she lived at 10 years ago. They wrote back, she does not live here anymore.
You know who's really at fault here, right? Cassie bought my book a long time ago, or my course, and I pulled her address off of PayPal or something. So
I'm trying to be sly and send it without, advance warning.
I'm probably the person at fault in the whole thing.
I wasn't going to go there, but so it's on its way, right? It's made a few treks around from the Northwest to the South.
If you send us a pic of you wearing a Dirty Side of Leadership podcast, we will figure out a way, either in the Facebook group or the Instagram group. We will put it out there. And thank you so much for wearing that. That's great advertisement.
And Marty already posted and tagged us. So thank you so much.
Did.
It's great
Thank
on him.
you, Marty.
He said he loves the fabric.
Yeah, Kristin knows. I thought she was going to send me one of those
crunchy
t-shirts they get from China that the arms are all baggy. I'm serious.
Yes, I hate that.
So
crap.
I was not very supportive of her doing this, really. And I sent something like, I hope it's not whatever I said, Kristin.
Ron wanted to look good, understandably.
I wanted to look good, and I work out, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to be too sexy for my shirt. And when I got it, I was pleasantly surprised. I really was. You just have to be careful, because when you cross your arms, it just says the dirty side.
Like, excuse me? I have to just say, because anything attached to my name, and I know you're the same way, want to make sure that it represents me well. It's like an extension of me.
That's exactly right.
I went on jiffy.com. I'm not, promoting them, but I've had a great experience. And I ordered 5 different t-shirts. And I wanted the softest, I wanted a really good fabric that's going to make someone feel good about themselves and make them want to wear it. And my husband's very fabric sensitive. He likes, and Andy likes a certain fit that shows off muscles. So anyhow, out of the 5, and I had my husband trying them on, right? And we found a winner. But the whole point is, I didn't just point and send it off for printing, right? I actually was like, let me do my due diligence. I want to feel all the fabrics. How do they fit? So all of that's really important. And I wish more businesses would approach what they're doing that way.
Absolutely. All right. Kristin,
on that note,
man, we've gone a lot of different directions, but it's a podcast, right? And
we're pivoting. Hope you didn't get whiplash.
So much fun. And Kristin, how can people get one of those t-shirts we were talking about?
Yeah. So if you go on and rate our podcast, I say that, I articulate that very well, because if you say it fast, it sounds like a different word. So rate our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and send a picture or a screenshot showing that you did so. You can send it to Ron's Instagram, Facebook, my Instagram or Facebook. And I will send you off a t-shirt, as soon as I get that receipt from you, showing that you've rated us, and share it with friends. Have a friend rate us if you've already done it.
Yeah. Side effects include people think you're sexy.
Yeah. Hey.
All right.
Matthew wore his out on a date. So that says something about the fit.
Wow.
I know.
Good job, Matthew.
I appreciate that.
All right, everybody. Be the leader you're meant to be.
We'll see you next week.
The Dirty Side of Leadership podcast is brought to you by Forward Operations. If you'd like to book Ron or Kristin for speaking events, training, or executive coaching, visit forwardoperations.com. Be the leader you're meant to be.